in the absence of our committee chair. It is 5:01, Tuesday, November 1st. And our first order of business on our agenda is to review the minutes and seek approval of those minutes. And I understand we all received these just now. So if you want to take a scan, and then we'll search for a motion and then a discussion. A motion and a second and a discussion.
I took a quick look, so I'm going to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes and the approval of such? We'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous vote to accept the minutes from the October 4th, 2022 meeting. Well, that was all I was planning on doing, but now I guess since we've done that so fast,
You did a great job.
we thank you very much.
Who seconded it?
We had a second over here.
Thank you.
I think since I was at the community forum on housing, I think I feel comfortable enough moving forward to this part of our agenda. And I know that we had some other people present.
Like half of us were there.
Like half of us were there. And I think I will turn it over to each of you who were there. I know Pete was there. So why don't you start by giving us a brief synopsis of what you thought about the meeting?
I thought it was productive. I thought that Joe, the town administrator, and the housing trust members, I think Judy Underwood and Larry Brophy were there. And I thought they gave a good overview. I think there was a lot of discussion of the Marceline property, which I think was great and timely. What I heard, and I'm sure others maybe heard the same or differently, but I'd love to hear, was that there was a lot of push from the community, from the public, to move more quickly on that parcel, for a variety of reasons, not least of which is that it's staring us right in the face, sort of, and we have an opportunity, and that it's the biggest site, I think, in the scattered. I heard that the scattered sites aren't really getting people excited as something like this. There's detail regarding that project, or that project site that I think is their charge. I do think that generally the town has, I agree with that. I'm new back, having moved back, but these are opportunities that only come once in a while, and knowing what we know, and we'll talk about for our own process, these things take an incredibly long time, so I would urge the same. But there wasn't a lot of talk of high-level policy, and if we're going to take that up, I think that that's something to note, that meeting, and I think there's one tonight again, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see more, and maybe we try to intersect our work, I guess.
Can I ask,
You may, of course.
what's slowing this one down? Was there any discussion of that?
Yeah, I mean, the typical, it's not hand-wringing, but it's as close to it on the positive side as you could say. It's like, what do we want? And, visioning and years of, and they're rightfully, right? Not just architectural styles, but mixed use, meaning mixed income,
How dense.
workforce,
How
how dense, that is, will take time. But if you don't sort of start these processes, you then have years of grant applications, right? So.
And who is making that decision, or are they trying to get a lot of public input before making it?
It was said multiple times. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, it looks like they're trying to get public input, but on the same line of thinking that you're on, if I could interject, I was there.
Yeah.
I guess it amazes me that it takes this long to create a policy by which you can make easier decisions to say, this fits that runway, let's go ahead and make a decision now. I'm probably the most naive member of our illustrious group here, but it just, it amazes me that it takes this long to create.
I couldn't even figure out, though, who really does make the decision? Is it the trust? Because I think they have some money, right? Or is it the town administrator or the selectmen? It wasn't.
Or does one make a recommendation? You're right, it wasn't clear.
Yeah, it wasn't clear.
But there was a lot of enthusiasm.
No
I have to say, there was a crowded room. People want to see action.
What I heard, my limited knowledge is, and the town administrator was quite careful, is ultimately many of these decisions are selectmen level first,
Selectmen, yeah.
to a large degree, town meeting second, housing trust and planning board and others would have inputs into those, but that's sort of what I understood, and we should ask, I think, tonight. But what and I'll say this tonight as just citizen, that I think that we should engage someone to start planning that site as soon as possible. Because
right.
talking about, we didn't elicit a lot last time.
Yeah, just a couple other things. There are other issues too, like just should they, in a sense, give the land or sell the land to a developer? Or should
Yeah.
the town be doing it, or the committee doing it? I mean, who should build it? And that seemed to me like the discussion was at its
That's
infancy and not really far along either. And the whole issue of, are you selling these, are you renting these, how are you gonna make sure they stay nice? There's a lot of that, but I thought it was a really productive discussion, and I was pleased that it was all in pretty good spirit. There was no shouting, this is horrible, this is good. There was only one or two people who seemed really concerned about density and maybe these low-income people would trash it and stuff like that. But I think for the most part, people were pretty upbeat.
This is the Marshall Line property, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think this whole issue of is it how much density is important, and they talked about how this is just one opportunity, right? There could be lots of other opportunities, and so trying to figure out, do you concentrate on the large opportunities or the small opportunities? How do you make that decision? I thought it was there. Oh, by the way, Joe also gave, he had a great PowerPoint session. He promised to put them up on the website. I couldn't find them, but it's worth looking at them. There's a lot of information there. Just things like, what does affordable housing mean? What does...
That's how he started it, yeah.
Yeah, and like the whole thing about, what was the other level?
Workforce housing.
Workforce, affordable housing and stuff. So all those issues are out there too.
Yes. Hi, Bernadette.
Hi.
How are you? Don't be sorry, it's fine. So I'd like to add to the conversation. I think a lot of people who were at the meeting missed the overarching theme of why the meeting was going to occur. And to your point, Mr. Powers, his interest was simply to, I think, accomplish two things. And I met with him yesterday on a few things. The first piece was for him to create frameworks so people understand the terminology. Workforce housing, affordable housing, capital A, capital H, small h, and I think his intention was to make it clear to our residents what all those terms mean, so that we can all start from the same page. I think the second point that he wanted to make was this was really for discussion by our townspeople. It opened the door for discussion for, with our townspeople of what they're looking for this kind of project. And by creating the framework, or at least explaining the framework, then everybody can discuss with the same intentions and ideas in mind, same verbiage. The things that troubled me, it seemed as if the committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, they're thinking more in terms of single-family dwellings in this tremendous piece of property. And that's where many people in the audience stood up and questioned density, which brings to the next point, that town government moves at the pace it moves at as basically a stopgap from moving too fast and creating too many mistakes. So yes, to your point, Peter, I believe it has to go town meeting if we want to change the bylaws regarding density and zoning and such, which it was great to see Julie Kavanaugh.
And it would need sewers.
And there's a lot to unpack, and it was great to see Julie Kavanaugh there, and Julie Kavanaugh was very pro changing the bylaws with respect to density and zoning and so many different things that go into this. So with that being said, I think tonight's meeting should be a little bit more meat and potatoes, and I think people will have a better understanding of exactly what they're talking about when they ask their questions. But I think it's too early, my point is, I think it's too early for the town to really weigh in, because we really didn't know anything. Hi, Joyce.
Hey, Francis. Jeff, were you
Yes.
meeting tonight? That reference you just made?
I believe there's a meeting tonight.
It was canceled.
Oh, it was
Yeah, it was
canceled.
canceled. I found that out a week and a half ago, but obviously they didn't do a good enough job
I
of
did not know
getting
that.
that out there.
I did
Yeah, I think we thought there was another one, and I don't know for sure, but perhaps the reason they canceled it was that there's a big sort of regional housing
Yes.
thing going
Oh,
on
right.
Thursday.
It's a big
And I have no
forum this
idea if
week.
that's why.
Okay.
But maybe just because I'm in that building all the time working. So that must have
I
been
think
where I
they have-
heard
because
said
there's a
something a
regional
couple
forum
weeks
coming up
ago,
on
and somebody said, no,
Thursday.
it was canceled.
Okay, well, that's great information for us to know that it's canceled. So Pete, you don't have to go.
This is the housing.
The housing, so
Yeah.
we've, bring up to
Thank you
speed.
for getting going. I wish it was for something even glamorous. I locked my keys in the car. So
Oh.
it wasn't
there.
even that exciting
And you're gonna tell us that?
because I was frazzled to
Texted her
get
to say I
here. But
was gonna be
thank you
5
for
minutes
getting the
late.
meeting started.
Minutes were approved.
Thank you.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna have to go ice my arm now. But the minutes were approved, and we are now into
Yes, housing
the
update.
discussion of the Housing Community Forum.
Yes.
And these three gentlemen have spoken, I've spoken, and
Minutes
now
approved,
let's hear
right?
from Bernadette, and then we'll come back. Because
What-
Bernadette, you were there as well, so I'd
Yeah,
like,
no, I'm backing up
Now
to
it's all yours.
minutes.
Thank you.
I didn't, sorry, I didn't get the minutes, so.
Yeah,
That's all
let me,
right.
let me just add my
Yes,
reaction
please.
to it. And I
There was a-
thought it was a
there was a
great
glitch in the
open
email.
forum for getting those definitions
Were
out on the
mentioned in the
table.
email, yes.
So I thought it was very informative,
Yeah.
but being a little more action-oriented, I was anxious to hear about where do we start to execute on next steps. And I was encouraged that there were a couple of developers in there who brought up questions about how do we fast path when it's in the interest of the town, trying to address some of the needs, critical housing needs. You know, can there be mechanisms by which we speed up the development of such important sites as what we're talking about? So I thought it was all very encouraging.
and I think it's clear that our town wants this to move forward.
Yes.
And I think the pressure from the people who had got up and spoke made it very clear that the time was 5 years ago, and I think Larry Brophy was the one who stood up and said that this is gonna take a long time to get done.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people took a big breath and thought, that's not what we wanna hear tonight.
Well,
So,
I thought it was
Sure.
interesting too, there's this relatively young guy who is developing stuff, you know, like small things where it's 3 units or whatever for affordable housing and stuff. And he was interested, he's like, you're not gonna slow me down, I'm gonna do this. And maybe we need more of that too, is
well, if you
encourage-
remember, his stopgap was permitting.
Permitting,
Yes,
Yeah, I
that's
know.
right.
That's right.
That's right.
permitting was. the
Permitting
issue.
was, he said he'd be up in building right now if permitting was an easier process for him to go through.
Is he saying that the review process is too long, or that he can't make it work because of density? Do you know which of those two?
All he said, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the people who were there, was if I could get my permits,
Yeah, it was just delays.
Yeah, it was
I don't think
delays.
it's
I mean,
anything to
his
do with
case
the
was taking
process, except.
a relatively big house
just
and I
not
think
able
turning
to-
it into 2 or 3 units.
it's a schoolhouse.
So
I
it wasn't.
believe is the West Harwich.
Yeah, West
School.
House
It
School.
is,
Yeah,
he's
so
the West
it-
Harwich
it
Schoolhouse,
wasn't-
and he's looking at like 4 units. And my impression was he was just saying, maybe they're overworked like everybody, and
This is
it
something
would have
you
happened
want.
already, it's just the formality of getting the permits.
And I talked to him afterwards, he says it's very clear you can make money doing this, you know, it's just,
Yeah.
you just have to be able to do it.
How long ago was that sale on that schoolhouse?
I wanna say last summer,
This was in the summer?
No.
the
No,
spring,
no. I think it was more like 6 months ago.
spring, last spring.
Early spring, yeah. It was recent.
I'll go home and ask.
Yeah.
Just
So-
any other sentiment you think that representative of, so we'll keep plowing ahead, but go ahead.
Let me ask a question, and I did not get to go to the forum, I wasn't here. But this summer was a bit of a mess, in my opinion, because, we had to stop watering our lawns, we had to do this and everything else. And the reason they said was the aquifer, quote unquote, but it was also because of pressure. So while we're saying that we need to move ahead, that we should be moving faster for this development, I don't believe that we have the infrastructure available or even in design to deal with something of this size. So, you can't build if you don't have streets, if you don't have water, if you don't have gas or electric, et cetera. And I'm sorry, but the water, that's a major issue. And if we had trouble this summer with pressure, what are we gonna have at that point when you have a development that large?
I think it's a great point for the topic of the agenda. The idea was just to kind of get all out here what the sentiment of the meeting was, and it sounds like that was very effective, and we're getting to all that. Here we are in our 2-year process. But any other salient points that, of those who went, that thought we should know?
I think the unanswered question too is, and we'll get to this, I guess, is like exactly what is our role
Yeah.
in thinking about this
Yes.
versus their role
Yes.
versus the town selectman role, so.
To our next point on the agenda, which I think our role right now on the agenda is to kind of point the flashlight around the RFP in terms of getting our much-needed consultant. So that's why there's going to be opinions. That's why we're here on video talking about this. Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think in response to your comment, Jim, I think we can only touch the surface right now.
Right.
But to me, we're policy. So the housing committee has to go much further than that. But if there are issues with permitting or with growth or with lack of affordable housing availability, we have to delve into those policies.
Yes, which
You know,
is.
it may be a year and a half into it, but
Yes.
we've got to get there at some point.
Agreed, 100%, and I think we're all kind of on the same page that we need our formal consultant and that the RFP is around that. So I know Jeff has done a lot of legwork for the committee this past week about this. Do you want to bring us up to speed?
Sure, I'd love to.
And then I know Pete's going to have thoughts, and then our
Sure.
other professionals will have thoughts too, but go ahead, thank
Yeah.
you.
I met yesterday with Joe Powers for about an hour and 15 minutes to go over what we should be thinking and what we should be doing, both overall and with respect to the RFP. The takeaways for me that were most important, number one, he said, make sure you pace yourselves. And this is gonna be a long process. He expects this to go to become live in 2025 because of what needs to happen in the timeline that we have to adhere to. So for example, if we put out an RFP, and these are his words, not mine, if we put out an RFP in the next month, we would be, which our legal team would have to draft up and make that happen. Then we would be looking for candidates to show interest prior to December 23rd. Then it would go to the procurement team, which would be Joe, to hopefully we get 3 to 10 applicants. And then he figures in February of 2023 is when we would then have a consultant. But remember that we need a planner as well. And we don't have a planner at this point. So we really don't have much, okay? So okay?
Have ourselves,
So, really,
We have all of
Yeah.
us
we
here.
just have somewhere to go on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. But
Halloween candy.
what I found interesting was when you accelerate the timeline, let's say it takes us 2 years to put it together, now we have to wait for town meeting to approve this, which would be in April of 2025. So as he put it, pace yourselves, because once a consultant hits, he views these meetings taking 2 to 3 hours of time. So I love this 1 hour, but
Well,
I
we
think
can.
you might be setting us up for
Yeah,
a
no, 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 no,
problem.
you know, and I get that, and I get it totally, but the point of talking about this is, you know, we also have some momentum too, with some real critical issues around the town, around housing and water, and I get it, and I respect the whole thing, but, you know, we strike while the iron's hot a little bit too. We're all
Absolutely.
here and we got some stuff to pay attention to.
I think this is good quality, I'm sorry.
Oh, I would just suggest,
No, go ahead, David.
I would just suggest that if we put as our guiding principle pacing ourselves, that 2025 will soon become 2027.
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah,
2030.
yeah, keep working at this.
So I think we should not be urgent, but we should have more urgency than pacing ourselves.
As he put it.
From a
he-
planner
and
himself.
He believes that as soon as the consultant lands, when the consultant lands, it will take off.
So and we're doing some things, and I have some thoughts about the other points of the agenda that we can kind of get ourselves organized before they come. So was the sense that accepting whatever input or offers before December 23rd, is that realistic? Is that like an ideal time to do that? Is that it's a
If
terrible
our-
time to get, in my land, to get things done, but.
If our legal team can get the RFP done,
Yeah, I don't think so.
Who
And-
is this legal team?
KP Law,
KP Law, outside counsel, town.
town council, right?
They're gonna write the scope of work? for
Yeah,
this
so
RFP?
that-
No, hold on.
Sorry.
No,
I
this
do a
is
lot
why
of-
we're,
This
this
is-
is why
I
we're
get
putting
it.
this all on the
Nope.
record. We're pointing the
So
flashlights.
with our input,
Got it.
so it's a boilerplate, right? There's, the majority of the document is a boilerplate document that we then as a committee get to add our flavor to. For example, he talked about things that we would be looking for that we would consider highly advantageous, moderately advantageous. So for example, do we want someone who's had 10 years of experience in this? That would be a highly advantageous characteristic. If we want somebody who's actually done one of these on Cape Cod, with the help of the Cape Cod Commission and understanding the language, that would be something that we would be advocating for. So those are the things that we would need to be thinking of, what the consultant that we would want to work with would be bringing to the table. I think you had a,
Yeah,
I don't wanna
can
steal
you
this,
No,
but-
can you explain to me where we lost 2 years between 2023 and 2025? Did I miss something somewhere?
So-
Maybe 2 years?
so about,
You probably, I mean,
This is a
you
two-year
know this
process.
from your professional background, right? Can
I
you-
think Joe's analysis, expectation of 2025 is right on target if we continue to move along well. The reason is, this is a pretty comprehensive document that we're taking on. We don't even know yet how to work well with each other.
Okay, so you're talking about the document to be done.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were not gonna get the planner on board until 2025.
no, the planner should be here in February.
What?
February,
Which
but we still
seems
haven't-
ambitious to me.
How are we gonna do
Yeah.
that?
We
That's-
still don't have a town planner though, correct?
Right.
Correct. The other things that will hold us up a little bit, if I can say it that way, is part of our plan will include open space and conservation, housing, affordable housing trust. So there's a lot of other committees that need to have their plans in place, and none of them do.
Oh, but we can
So,
encourage them.
in order for us to be able to dig into what we need to do, these other committees need to have their plans in place. And his suggestion was, those are the committees we need to speak to first.
Sure.
So that we can get on the same page with those committees, and then, yes.
Well, just in the same thought process, when you say what would be helpful
Sorry.
to require from a consultant, might it be somebody who's got
Stamped.
not just experience, 10 years of experience or experience on the Cape, but experience with some of the hotbed issues that we're facing? And we could brainstorm a few of those, but what you just said triggered a thought that maybe we need some of those hotbed issues to bubble up from these committees that we still have yet to talk about.
And that's very, very, very well put, and you hit the nail on the head,
I want to hear
honestly.
from Pete about this a little bit too.
Yeah.
There's some professional.
So let me just finish what the meeting was about, and then
Yes,
I
go
will
ahead.
be quiet and you all
No,
can
no,
can
no.
have your way.
Thank you for doing it.
Yes,
Um,
we really appreciate you doing it on behalf
No,
of
no, no,
us.
listen.
Thank you.
We're all in this together. I think
We are.
the key another key takeaway was, what do we, as a committee, want this document to be? And how do we want the town to use the document from potentially 2025 to 2035? So, and this will be my last point, unless there's questions, but the last LCP has not been utilized at all by anybody. So the question would be then, why do it? Right? The question would be, why do it? So when we are formulating our vision and we're discussing what we're discussing over the years here, I think it's important for us to clarify earlier rather than later, what do we want this document to be and how do we want our town to use it? And if we can think of those two questions and come up with answers to those two questions, I think we're gonna be off to a great start, which I believe we already are. So, if there's any questions for me
No, yeah.
about
so-
the meeting, happy to.
Just on that last question, so
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
No, seriously.
is
I'm
there a thought
grateful.
that in other towns, there needs to be buy-in from committees that our work, while in parallel and in concert and collaborative, right? Because we talked about in our first meeting being information gatherers, right? Not necessarily policy makers, because we're not elected, but rather pulling those together. Is part of Joe's suggestion that we go to these other committees and say, hey, we can help you answer some of the questions that you yourselves have about policy in this town? Because it's not that the committees work in a silo, but perhaps they don't even know that the tool's available. Like when one is interviewed for, say, the Conservation Commission, just to pull one, any commission, I'll say, are they handed the last LCP and say, this is the guidepost?
Maybe
Great.
that's a
Great question, and
Way
the
to
answer, the answer is, not in the last 12 years.
Right.
Because there was no real direction by this committee
Sure. Yeah, to keep
how they want
ourselves
it to be
relevant.
To use
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
who
yeah, yeah.
use it.
So some of it is,
I
so
like
some of
that.
it is saying, like, and I don't wanna get too much into the weeds, cause like, have you ever been on a strategic planning mission statement thing where like, you're, it's getting colloquial, like whatever group you're doing, your $50,000 consultant just like eats up all of it to like make one sentence, I mean, which can be very powerful, but I don't think any of us, we all kind of know why we're here, but like, point well taken to like keeping this thing relevant and putting it out in, for everyone else who is involved in this to use it.
No, but I think the key point that you said, I love the what and the how.
Yeah.
And in some ways, in order to formulate the what, we need to keep probing at the how.
Yeah,
Because the how is gonna
It's a
inform the
living
what.
process.
yes.
Now, I speak
Yeah.
from 30 years of doing strategic consulting, not just
No.
one sentence.
No, I'm joking, because I just did that something for another professional society, so it's
I'm
like the
having
front
fun.
of my
We have to
brain.
have a little fun.
Yes.
Yes. But to me, what makes planning successful is that it's traceable, right?
Yeah.
From mission to strategy, to plan, to execution. And the most effective uses of plans that I've ever been experienced with test the plan continuously against the strategy. So part of that how, and again, I don't know the mechanics of it within town planning and town execution, but if the how included a mechanism by which subcommittees or selectmen, policymakers were able to test themselves against a plan that they ratified, which is connected to a strategy. And if anything changes, you need to make it a living document. You have to actually reflect those changes, either a plan that was based on a new strategy or a strategy change that will affect the plan. So in order for this thing, in my experience, in order for
Yeah.
plans to be effective, they need to be living and they need to be traceable. Vision, strategy, plan, and when things change, they need to also change with it.
So are you, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go.
Mr.
I was
Spitz.
just, are you referring to like more of a wiki like more of a wiki-based instead of just a stagnant Word
Oh,
document.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
so you can see the evolution of the document, you can see who had the inputs, how those iterative changes happened, and it makes sense.
Yep,
I agree with you.
fully traceable.
Yep.
I'm just multitasking here.
It's ambitious, but good.
But,
I think
but
it's
kind
great.
of, I think in
We're in the
keeping with
2020s.
our evolving values as a committee, yeah, Mr. Spitz.
It's a tool.
The, I didn't want to start here, but I will, just for a second. The last town plan had all sorts of goals, actions, and so forth. They weren't followed. I suspect that was mostly, I was way too familiar with that plan. But the planning board didn't have a lot of buy-in, didn't have a lot of the outreach that this committee is starting to focus on. So that's one point.
Oh, good.
The,
We're barking up the right tree then, okay.
the strategies for writing requests for proposal.
Please.
I don't think we're
Let's
quite,
point this light more, because
I
this
don't
is a
think
good
we're
thing to
quite
keep entering
there
into the
yet.
record.
The legal team, they know all the boilerplate. I do too, several others of you might. But the key is the scope of work. And that scope of work, this committee should be overseeing.
Okay,
And I don't think we're quite ready for that yet.
100%.
Now, as far as outreach, there are a lot of different ways to do it.
yeah,
The suggestion about reaching out to the commissions and committees is probably a very good use of our time, right from the outset. Now, I don't think there's over 50 committees in this town.
right.
We don't need to talk to all of them. I'll use one bad example. We don't really need to talk to the golf committee.
As a golfer,
I would have
volunteered.
Now,
You're gonna be the subject matter expert on the golf committee?
I could easily be overruled on that.
No, I think we have to do that on the golf course.
But conservation, health, housing committee, there's probably somewhere between 5 and 10 that would
Yeah.
really give this committee a much better idea of what the issues are in
So
town.
can you educate me a little bit, and then I know Pete has something to say about this too. So the scope of work in the RFP, right, I understand for the actual labor you're asking for. So the scope of work, does it look like 2 paragraphs? This is what we're undertaking? Like, when you say scope of work,
Well,
explain that to me.
I would want to see some RFP examples, either provided by the Cape Cod Commission or by some other local plan in Massachusetts who have done that. So we could, without a whole lot of work, get some good boilerplates
Great
from
idea.
other places.
Yeah.
My guess is that the scope of work is more like 2 pages than 2
Yeah.
paragraphs with
Okay.
this
Yeah, but
type
it's-
of document.
Okay,
But I'm not sure, I'd have to see the other examples.
okay, thank you. Pete, did you have?
well, so 2 things. One is as Jeff pointed out, if we think that this consultant's gonna be on board in February,
That seems,
given the holidays,
in my
Right.
land, like, nothing's gonna happen January 1st in my professional life, but I don't know if that's, not.
no,
but you know what I mean,
think,
around this
I
kind
think
of
as a
stuff,
volunteer board, I think we all have stuff going on. I'm more worried about the firms responding.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, that's what I'm saying,
So,
like, this,
so we're behind the 8 ball
right.
for February, so that's number
Yeah.
one. Number
Right.
2
that's what I'm saying. I
is,
agree.
while I agree with Joe's comment, I think to Jeff, right, about KP Law, that's negotiation of the contract. To David's point, we're all saying the same thing. We're just, I think,
Yeah.
maybe bringing it all together.
Okay,
Absent a town planner who's a professional, and absent Margot, David, myself, maybe some others that have not certainly done consulting contracts, but have planning backgrounds, absent us writing the RFP or the scope of work ourselves, why wouldn't we, because we're not paying a town planner however many tens of thousands of dollars in salary, why wouldn't we ask the town for a small, I hate to say it, consultant contract?
Two reasons.
Two
Go.
reasons.
Finish
Under
the thought.
$10,000.
No.
Oh.
But,
Because in the absence of a town planner, and right now, we do have a potential interim town planner
oh, nice.
okay.
on
This is
deck.
news.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
there's,
Bring it.
everything that's being brought up was brought up yesterday.
Great.
And I can
Good.
answer as we go.
Oh, yeah.
Or, if that doesn't happen, in the absence of a town planner, Joe Powers would step in. So
see.
in order to not stall our progress
so
of
that answers-
getting a consultant, and I might add that it was made very clear that the consultant is the person that we will really work hard with. And the town planner will be called in
Okay.
sporadically over the whole process of writing the
So,
RFP.
so, all right, so that's what makes it more clear. So
Correct.
if Joe and his staff, Megan and others, can help us write the RFP,
No, we are not writing the RFP at all.
Yeah.
They are writing the RFP.
sorry, Jeff, maybe it's semantics. David, within a request for a proposal, which is not the contract, but the basis for the contract, there is a scope of work. Somebody has to write the scope of work. And I think what we're saying is, we need Joe and his staff and us to write that scope of work. Is that?
To a point.
Yeah.
To a point. And it was made very clear that our involvement with the writing the RFP is minimal. It's minimal.
What if we don't agree with that?
Well, that's where we can weigh in
Got it.
with what we feel is, like, for me, what would be highly advantageous, a critical piece in order to hire somebody would be that they have done a local comprehensive plan on Cape Cod and worked with the Cape
Okay,
Cod
for you,
Commission.
right, and so this
Yeah.
may be, like, is kind of summarizing it, this may be a way to harness our momentum and our routine of meeting and things like that to take advantage of the resources available to us in, you know.
Or to ask for more resources.
Joe's office.
As we can.
And then to, you know, David's point about then putting our stamp on it as well to,
There,
But,
Make it
can I
relevant.
say there is a distinction between writing the RFP and developing the scope of work. And I think we have to be involved in developing the scope of work.
scope of work,
I don't
which
care
is
about
part of
who
it, it's
writes
kind of a
It's-
two-pronged thing.
We just
Yeah.
have to
Are
decide.
you speaking about the scope of work for the consultant?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
But,
yes.
but the scope of work for the consultant's gonna be very close to what we think is the scope of work for us.
And I think to your point, the scope of work is a bit of a living document as we go through this, right? It's a malleable.
It has to be. I
It
was
has
gonna
to
say
be.
the same thing, Brian, before we said it. You know, we're catching ourselves up all the time, because as we're trying to plan and plod through the next 2 years, things are happening in town, things are happening with other boards, turnover on boards.
Yeah.
So it definitely is gonna be somewhat fluid and kind of a broad
And, you know,
picture
to the
of
really, I
where we
love,
want this town to go.
I love the question of what do we want this ultimate document to be and how do we want to use it? That's, you know, going through the scope of work, that, a lot of that is the same.
Wiki's a good analogy.
Keep in mind also that with the change that happened with respect to the wastewater management plan, if we were in the middle of writing our local comprehensive plan, when the change happened, we'd have to make a pretty significant pivot.
Yeah.
Because as we have to look at we're charged with really dictating what happens with open space in the town. That's the overarching theme of what we're doing. There are other points that fall underneath that, but primarily, the wastewater management plan is really what we have to pay big attention to.
I'm curious.
I was just
Yeah.
wondering who decided that was the overarching
Yeah.
theme.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's gonna dictate a lot of the things that we're gonna be discussing underneath that. And that was Joe's,
It's funny, because I would have said that the fact that our town is becoming richer and richer, and half the people can't afford to live here anymore.
Yeah,
I would have said that was the most
I would have seen
important.
it as
well, that's underneath that.
several
wouldn't it be?
things.
No, I don't think so.
wouldn't, no. No, because open space doesn't automatically mean you save it or you build it.
Right.
It doesn't automatically mean you build on it.
That's right.
But we also have climate change, we have the
Yeah.
fact that,
Yeah.
We got a lot of
I
things.
think there are
And-
several,
Like the-
there might be several things up there at the top and then a lot
I agree with
that
that.
scaffolds under.
I agree with that.
I have a quick question around,
Yes,
so
and then I want to bring it back around.
if
in
the,
my
if the
time.
goal of this, let's just say the goal of this plan is to really dictate the next 10 years from 2025 onwards, do we have a list from the town of ongoing projects that are set to complete prior to that, where we can build in and say, hey, we're not gonna redo this stuff because we're not worried about it, right?
Great idea.
So we can at least say, hey, our mile marker's here, or the expectation that our mile marker's here, so we're not pivoting you know, 2024, like, oh, shoot, we didn't know about that. Okay, let's change the wiki, or let's change our plan a little bit. I just think if we can get maybe a list of the major milestones that we have to complete before that, I think it could help us in
Is that among a number of things we want to hear from each of the different committees?
probably.
That's right.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And I think going to them and being open to listening to them
Yes.
will go a long way towards greasing wheels for us going forward. For whoever's on the boards and committees, when the plan is done, and you dump it in their lap and say, here, use it, they will. I mean, not that it should ever
Well,
be
they'll
that.
have buy-in.
But, you know,
They'll be
right,
directed
it's the
to
buy-in thing, the
And
buy-in.
there is a
And we will learn
platform.
something along the way, perhaps.
Yes,
because
of course.
I sit on 3, some of you sit on a few, but we don't sit on all of them and don't, you know, it would be good to ask for their input, their help, their, you know, give us a snapshot of
Can I
what you
make a
do, what.
suggestion? Sorry.
Yes, and then we're gonna
Just-
move on.
Just to bring this home, though. We have to have to stay on track, even with the, take your time, right? Those are not, you know,
Everything's
in
slow down.
conflict. But in order to stay on track and have a consultant on board, even in the first quarter of next year,
Yes, which is our goal.
we have to have an RFP on the street in during the holidays.
Yep.
For them to respond, shortlist, interview, select, contract.
Yeah.
Notice to proceed. We've done this, right? So I can draw that, right? I can circulate that.
Yeah.
So if we work backwards,
Yes,
it's November.
yes. So let's, I would offer, let's not get hung up on the time, like if it's not out by, you know, but I think what you're saying is I was gonna transition
Yeah.
but come back.
Yeah.
That are actionables for our next meeting, like like work that needs to happen in the
Right,
next.
so I was-
Work that needs to happen in the next month.
Yeah. So those things that I would do exactly, in order to stay on that,
Correct.
is we should ask the town
Yes,
staff
yes.
to provide us with
Completed.
5 examples.
Correct.
Of town-wide or regional planning services RFPs.
That is a takeaway.
For us to read.
That I will ask for tomorrow.
So that's.
We're on the same page.
There, that's one.
And Joyce, who do you ask?
Joe Powers.
Eh,
I don't think, I mean,
Can't ask the
Truro
gonna
just
ask.
did this. Truro just
Awesome.
did this.
Great.
Joe, I mean, unless you
I
have.
did that, no,
No.
And-
that's fine.
Yeah.
And the reason I would say
Period.
5, even if they can only put 4, is
Yeah.
3 is not enough and 6 is too many.
Yeah.
So.
Love it.
you-
5 is
but
good.
Because that's a good amount of reading.
Yep.
So if we can do that. And then the other thing is, and I think your agenda takes us there, is what meetings do we start to set up with these other committees?
Those are
Like we
good.
planned this. Can we transition
On
to
the
our
first-
next part of
Yes,
agenda? But,
yes.
okay.
By the way, I find this very hard to conduct business with 9 people, or even 11 if we had it. We're gonna have to figure that out somehow. But
Subcommittees.
meanwhile, as far as I'm asking tomorrow, that's great. Get an idea of how long, when you can
Yes.
get an answer back.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they're gonna have to move
Yes.
pretty quickly to
Yes.
be ready.
Yes, you know, I think we are pacing ourselves, you know, words are just words. We're pacing ourselves with moving forward here too, so.
But I just know how busy they are, so.
Agreed, and there's a lot of other things going on before the town, so,
I was
okay.
gonna say, how many hats is Joe gonna wear?
So, moving on, to kind of keep organizing ourselves into what folks have said in terms of learning how to work together and stuff like that. One thing that we accomplished last time was really kind of identifying stakeholders, a thorough list of stakeholders. And to your point of that we can't conduct all our business or sort of all our fact-finding or listening through a format like this, we're gonna kind of move on to areas.
Great.
And potentially I want everyone to kind of identify a subject matter area that they want to be a subject matter expert in, and we understand a couple caveats. Couple caveats. Clearly, when we have the support of a consultant, there are probably going to be a variety of ways we're going to want to collect this information. We talked about listening to, you know, depending on what your area is going to be, listening, you know, there may be social media, there may be formal surveys, all that kind of thing. We don't want to get like hung up on that. To that end, about which we all recognize as high priority, I would say that, you know, we're going to have formal interaction with the planning board itself. This is high priority that we'd all be involved in. The Board of Selectmen, in terms of creating this living document. The topic around water, housing, land use, which everything is coming back to that. Those are, we're not gonna send somebody out individually, right? Is there a consensus about that, or we can open up for discussion about that, but these are our high priority issues that we're, and points of interaction that we're probably all be involved in.
Conservation is in that, how you just defined that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in
Sure.
land use.
Is there anything, and before we move to the more specific topics that you're all gonna become subject matter experts in, and I'll start to use myself as an example. You can come back and modify this, but I'm just kind of putting that out as a premise.
Good start.
Okay. I will use myself as an example just to kind of set the idea, like, I feel comfortable sort of putting myself forward as potentially being the SME around health, which would be fire, police, human resources, Fontaine, there's a town nurse. That's not hard for all of us to imagine me as a physician, right? So, and someone else can definitely be involved in that. But I put in here based on the list of kind of what we were talking about, and these groupings can be a little bit open to discussion if you want. I want to make sure we have it all, because I was doing it as one here. Schools, so including kids and teachers, health, which I just talked about, and you can be like, there's how many? There's 14, there's 11 of us, everyone can pick 2 or something like that. Surrounding towns, which Margot was talking a lot about last time, which I thought was very useful in terms of some of our issues overlap in terms of Chatham, Brewster, things like that. Seniors, which I know we have some abiding interest in. I kind of grouped this, you guys can tell me if you think this is valid, real estate developers, business, as these are sort of things that you don't want to break out, so this might be a place for 2 folks or even 3 if people have strong interests. The nonprofit world, which I know you were talking about having expertise in. This is meant to be inclusive in terms of our Cape Verdean immigrant people of color of the town, our LGBTQ friends as well. Working families I put in here because, when Jeff and I were talking about we were talking about what a privilege it is to really be able to come to a meeting like this at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, right? And that's a particular bias. So when I say working families, I mean everyone who maybe for a variety of reasons has, is not able to access this sort of format. So that's a special one to my heart. Harbors, fishermen, Pleasant Bay, Clergy, town employees, right? I mean, this is all really key. Part-time residents, which I think is a great one. When I was putting conservation, historical, we maybe want to take conservation out of that, but though there's some overlap, I was thinking more conservation, less land, more like our historical.
Historical can come under culture.
Preservation.
Okay, all right, that's the word,
Yes.
and preservation.
Where conservation has a different
Right.
connotation.
Yeah, those are very different.
Very.
Yes.
And I think we want it over here.
Yes, and we'll put that over there, those are high priority,
Resource conservation.
yeah. And arts, library, culture.
Yep.
Is there anything else that sticks out to somebody that they want to add? I mean, this is a living thing, it can
Yeah,
evolve.
well, we're lumping business developers and real estate. When you're talking about business, these are business owners, these are restaurants, these are shops, these are.
That could be, is there any discussion about that?
All the capitalists.
I'd
Well,
break it
they're
up.
No, but, well,
You would
small,
break it out?
small business as
Small
opposed
business.
Would you mean
to,
real estate developers
No.
too?
I think we're going the same direction. You said 2 people, I think you might need 3 people in 2 buckets.
Or call
Okay.
small business out
Which
as
is
its own
small,
group.
there's small,
That's what we're mostly are
This is,
here.
I'm good with that.
no, there's small business shopkeepers, there's small business
Okay,
contractor, labor, painter,
I'm good there.
small business.
Yeah.
and then,
that's what the fishermen are.
yeah,
too.
real estate, and then I agree with you, there's the tourism economy, which might be different. We could go on forever
I
on
know,
small
no, no,
business,
yeah,
but the
and
tourism
we're just-
economy.
You can broaden your category, like if
Yeah.
you realize we're missing somebody, just intellectually trying to
A
set
lot of
us up.
small
for success.
businesses
There may
are
be dimensions
for
of
the-
small business.
Correct.
That would be the
Really
Chamber
need
of
to-
Commerce. We could just talk to
Yeah.
Cindy.
Start there, start with
Start at the
Cindy.
chamber and see where she directs us. And may I add one more thing? Oh, sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
Barbara first,
No,
go ahead.
Sure.
Where are we putting just regular people?
That's what I wanted to
I was kind of thinking working families, that was my regular people, like the people who don't come to these
Residents.
meetings.
So let me speak to that if I may. Joe is, in the next 30 days, hopefully going to set our town up
Right.
with an online survey. So that there will be the ability for the people who, the masses,
Yeah.
right? To have our questions put online so that they can answer those in the comfort of their own home.
Okay,
You have to have internet and you need to be able to read.
97% of our town
I looked at
does.
that data.
You have to have
97% of our
internet,
town does.
you have to be computer savvy, of
Yes,
which,
yes,
you know,
yes, yes,
probably
yes.
70% of our
Which
population
this is like
is
a
not.
great, would you like to be that, does your heart beat
I would say
faster about being the
70%.
subject matter expert for the common man? Because there's lots of different ways to get people.
Aren't you glad you asked your question?
No, I'm more interested in historic, but that's,
All right, all right, so like,
can
again,
have
this
two.
is
They're all
evolving,
dead.
this is evolving, we can expand, yes, Brenda?
You want people, you know, I already said, schools and education's my background for 30 years,
All right,
and arts and culture, which library comes under that,
all
but,
right, I love it.
so, you know, those are
Anybody
two
else
that I'll
wanna, I mean, you
be
don't have to,
responsible.
you don't have to fight, this is not a like,
Joyce,
we need to solve.
You can
Yes.
put me down for any of the small business.
Okay, small business.
I would do that as well. I'm
And-
also nonprofit.
Nonprofit's great.
I was thinking of you with nonprofit. Garrett, do you want something else?
Yeah, I could do either the real estate developers or the surrounding town stuff.
Ooh, surrounding town.
I've got some relationships in some of the nearby
Okay.
towns.
Love it.
That's a very relevant one.
I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. too.
All right.
I'll,
this
I'll
is-
do historic.
So am I.
Right, where are my friends here?
That won't get us very far.
Gets us a directory.
We're all members, yeah.
I'd like to jump in
Yeah,
on
that's
town
true.
employees. or
I
anybody.
think you were so good,
That would be
see,
one
this
thing.
is awesome.
That's good. I
You
have,
could set us up with some kind of business after hours roundtable
Our names, so we
or
can see
something.
it.
Yeah.
But to Barbara's point, you know, residents,
Go ahead.
as
Yeah,
opposed to
you're not coming from right?
part-time
yeah,
residents.
so clearly I would do
Residents.
seniors.
Oh, nice.
Um,
It's Jim, yes?
Those
Yeah,
are the
Jim.
percent-
And,
percent of the
and I
library
think,
has access, but.
like, very related to that is health, and I've studied medical
Sure,
care,
you wanna do
healthcare
that,
stuff.
Dave?
Did I hear you say
And
70%
then,
of?
if somebody has to do it, I did spend 40 years as a part-time resident, so I could probably
love that.
You got more
do
than
that.
you
I don't
think
know what,
you do.
I don't know what
But senior
I love
that
it.
will involve.
Well,
I
seniors,
did
yes,
top,
but
yeah.
they're not all
All right.
computer illiterate either. I mean,
All right,
the
No, I'm not
senior
saying that.
library
volunteer
has a lot of people.
for
but I
the
get-
Cape Verdean
Love
That's
that.
nice.
by POC.
And I was thinking of you for this, but not to be, maybe, that might be my
I
own
think
little
there's gonna be
complicit
some,
bias.
there's gonna be overlaps.
Oblivious, but we
I'd
do
be
need
interested in
to
talking to the
make sure.
waterfront stuff,
okay.
the environmental, to the extent that there's other environmental, right?
Love
Is,
it.
would that include like the HCT? The,
Well, you know, we.
Or is environmental somewhere
Yes, and
else?
it's gonna probably kind of go a little bit with this, but you could totally do that, right? And it's not gonna be.
so maybe
yeah.
put
I think
enviro.
HCT is in part of that,
So
yeah.
I'll start with the communities of color and, and otherwise minority communities represented. I don't know, minority representation.
Ferret.
Great.
Spitz looks very doubtful. Would you like some Halloween candy?
Oh, he wants
I
to
got
do-
plenty of home, thank you.
He wants to do all 12 of them, like 14.
Or do you 15?
I keep talking housing. Why are we steering away from that?
Yeah, that's
Just
good.
because I feel like that is gonna be the committee as a whole.
That's
So
a
what
given.
we sort of envision is like, hey, you know, say, like for me, I just use myself as an example, like, obviously, you know, health is really important to the town, so I'm gonna probably, you know, reach out to these people that are sort of involved in that directly and kind of go on a little listening tour and then report back. And,
I
you know,
think-
have some written things and, but it doesn't need to slow us down as a whole, right? Where this is stuff we're gonna be addressing directly.
And I think the thing is, you go to these people and you say, what concerns do you have about the town you're in?
Right.
From your perspective, and where do you see us going, or where would you hope we can go in the next 10
And
years?
presuming our-
And
when
this
we-
is all gonna come up.
Yes, and when we hire.
That's kinda
right, and it all-
understood.
And when we hire this amazing consultant, there are gonna be a variety of tools for approaching these.
I was gonna
subject
say,
areas.
hopefully we all have the same questions, or at least a group of same
I was
questions.
just gonna
Maybe-
make a
well,
suggestion
it
that we
depends on who
actually-
you're talking to.
You have a listening document.
Listening to.
I'd be happy to create a straw model that says, here are 6 questions that would frame what we want to listen with.
Yeah.
I'm happy to work on that.
And those are prompts, and then you just,
Yes.
you listen to what they say to
Yeah,
you. If you
but
come
we-
in and you talk at them,
But we
it's
should
not
have
gonna help.
similar prompts that we're
Yeah.
listening for.
So Joyce, I only see about 3 gaps left.
Well, but
I
you
mean,
can, you can have a buddy, because
Don't-
it's always nice to
don't-
have a buddy.
Don't put me down for clergy, I would not be good at that.
I was gonna say,
At least you know your limits.
Working families and regular people, I can put my name in
I
there.
love that. And
A lot of the people we
was
meet are
thinking,
going
this
to do
might
that.
be, this
There'll be
might
a
be,
class.
this is interesting, David.
Yeah, I can do that.
And you can have a buddy, it's fun to work together.
Yeah, we need to do buddy ups.
So we, all right,
Yeah, so-
we've got 10 employees, we've got part-time residents, we've got architecture, Bernadette, Garrett's on 2, Brian's on 2. I was kind of just
I'll volunteer for a third.
excluding myself. What do you think about the clergy?
You know, that's what I'm thinking. I'm on the finance committee for Holy Trinity Church, so
Okay.
I
an
don't
anchor.
know away from there.
You're going that way in the end.
it's an anchor.
God, he's got the escalator.
Yeah, he's got the
Yeah.
high speed.
Oh, Barbara just pointed out, we have 4 people not here tonight,
Yeah.
too.
This is,
Oh, that's true,
Need
we're
some
missing,
open
Two
space.
who are we missing? We're missing
McManus?
Margot?
Man.
yeah, but we need,
Margot and Ed.
we need 2 in a box.
Margot and Ed.
Isn't that all?
All right, so we'll leave that, because they could jump on as buddies.
She keeps
We
giving
did-
They would
me,
be great.
come on, stop.
We need 2 at every one.
Yeah. Joyce,
Yes,
can I
yes.
ask
I
you?
can,
I thought there was, no?
Okay,
There's
well,
11
we won't assign that, because I was actually
15
thinking
times
Margot,
2.
I am gonna assign her to surrounding towns.
oh, I was just gonna,
It was 11 all
take
that-
that, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's where I was gonna go, but that's fine.
Okay.
we
Well,
can
you
have
already,
3.
so you already,
Another one.
Okay,
And
good.
then Ed got it.
yes, and we have McManus, Ed, but I want him to choose, because he might have interesting insights about what he wants to do. Yeah,
Town employees,
yeah,
for me,
yes,
health for you.
yes,
So you're gonna speak to fire, you're
Yeah.
gonna speak to,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
there'll be a little overlap there.
Of course, I was thinking.
That's probably a good
I'm
thing.
thinking, and I'm really, I'm not in the building, because we
That's
know those are
absolutely-
issues that are affecting us as a town.
Why I took
Put the
it.
cart before the horse.
Yes.
Maybe.
Other areas that,
something.
and you
Yeah,
can,
gotta do
you know, if
something.
you're
I don't
passionate
know if this is
about
the best
balls,
way.
I know, I just,
I mean,
We
nobody
should
said we
bring
were
a
going out and
buddy.
doing it
do we
tomorrow.
even have a
We
list
have to have
of
buddies
possible
out.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just-
firms to send this RFP out to? Do
Yep,
you know?
That we can get.
okay.
That's not hard.
Let's take some I do everything by pictures too.
I think we need to at least get that. Are you taking pictures?
But
Good.
we're not
Yeah.
taking action on this for a while.
No, but
This is
think
just-
about this, like,
is-
I take this seriously, I'm not, this isn't just for fluff, this is like, really, like, I'm gonna really kind of think about, okay, how do I wanna try and get that information, right? What might be, like, okay,
know
how
how
would
I
you
have to
approach
start with
the church,
Mhm.
right, the
Oh,
Harwich
yeah.
Council of Churches and all that.
HCH,
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That one,
so
yeah.
really trying to think about, this is
Well,
important
that's
on the
something I-
groundwork for
All right,
our consultants.
Mix it up and
I
get it
will
because my name's wasted.
Keep you apprised in lovely detail
I know
about
you
our
like
scope
real
of work and
Yes.
RFP
estate because I sleep.
examples.
I'm not,
Is there other new business?
Quick question,
No, I
is
know.
there, and I was just asking David, is there a way we can get copies of RFPs to at least know what we're looking at for the scopes of work and everything?
Yes, so that was actually, we were talking about that, that is my job. I'm gonna talk to Mr. Powers tomorrow and get examples of surrounding towns, and I would be delighted to distribute them to the BCC.
So many years.
And I think we should meet in December.
yeah.
I think our momentum is
Can
important.
I ask one question? Sorry.
Of course,
back on
is
that.
this new business, Peter? But yes, or is this?
Well, related to this.
Yes,
So these are constituencies, right?
yes.
Here are more like town boards.
Yes, and more like the overarching high priority issues. I know we're being a little sloppy there too, logically, but just try to kind of keep moving forward.
Right, so, but to take advantage of perhaps a light December agenda, like there was no ZBA hearing this month,
Okay.
right? We should start getting on the agenda for those committees if we wanted to at least introduce ourselves. So
Okay.
2 of us could go to, we could split up, similar, maybe follow the same track, this
Okay.
type of constituency
Okay.
track. And
Okay.
2 of us or 1 of us go to things and say,
Do you think December
What
is the month
library
to
meets
do it,
tomorrow
or
night,
no?
no,
I'd
it
be
could be
happy to
January.
take
January.
It's
All right.
more putting on the radar screen, making
Perfect,
sure Emily
perfect.
knows.
Yeah, right. It seems like this RFP and the scope of work is, but yeah.
We would
point
have
well
to,
taken.
we'd have to contact the clerk and the
Yeah.
chair of
Yes.
each and say,
Yes.
hey,
we
I'll
come.
invite,
we
I'll
are.
invite you to 2 right now.
you're the chair and clerk of both.
I'm vice chair for the library, and tomorrow night is our meeting at 7 o'clock at the library, and I am happy to let you come for public comment because
Well, you could
I'm
talk
running
us
it.
up.
Huh? Yeah, I can talk you up instead, and
So
same
think
thing,
about it.
next
The
week,
point of
I'll
the-
be doing.
The
Well, is
point
it-
of this exercise too is to kind of be like, oh, hey, this is my area that I'm.
Just on the good government stuff, if anybody, is that a formal sitting committee of the town?
Is
Or an
where-
ad hoc committee? Is that that's a board?
The
That's-
library?
Yeah.
Formal.
I'm an elected official of the town.
No, the board.
Okay, so do you have to, there's a question. Do we have to be on the agenda to come?
There's public comment. So, I mean, and I'm just teasing, but if you
No, no,
wanted to
I'm more
come
thinking
tomorrow
about,
night.
let's not.
He
ju-
wants to
just-
be
Yeah,
above board.
oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
rather, yeah, let's just start off the right way and
Yeah.
maybe go over the top and just say, let's just formally request from each of these
Okay.
to come on new business, so it's in the agenda and on the hearing docket.
So I think January,
okay, so
right?
That's my thought.
no, that's perfect, Pete, because we have a place at the end of our agenda every time that's for, trustee concerns or agenda building for the next. So
Great.
if you want, I can put it on, but if you'd rather have it be for January than December's meeting?
It's only November 1st. I'd try to get as many done as possible. We're all busy. There's
Yeah.
only, even though there are a lot of us.
Oh, so it's like,
I
Yeah,
think we should
okay,
start.
so
Or
very,
something.
very, so since I'm working on the RFPs, point, very great point, Pete. If everyone now has identified themselves as these are your little areas, your SMEs.
But we need seconds on all of them.
We do. we-
right, and that's what I'm
Okay.
thinking, if I'm running the cultural council meeting next Thursday, which I won't be doing the agenda till this Thursday, if someone else wanted to come rather than me as chair speaking to my council,
That's sort of weird.
So this was further discussion about this, so to the point of is there a vote to approve these? Or is there a second?
Let me make one change to it, though. I don't think
Okay.
we're subject matter experts, because that sends
What
the
would
wrong
you like to
tone.
call
Well, I
yourself?
think that, I'm not a clergy
Yeah,
person.
no,
But I think what they are we're subject matter or points of input. So they're subject matter inputs.
But there are also things that interest us as opposed to.
Well, they're
we're
interest
experts.
areas, so we're really kind of.
Member responsible.
How about just, primary contact?
Yeah.
yeah.
Primary contact.
Yeah, but I was thinking about it in terms of why am I sitting here with all of you? Do not, as I just said to David, I do not have real estate experience, although
Right,
people
I'm
come
not
up to me all the time because my
Cross-section
husband.
of the
That's the
community.
only
I'm here because of culture,
I make-
education, and that stuff.
Two other suggestions, sorry, Brenna,
No, that's okay.
while we're on this, and I'm sorry to stand, it's probably not the right of.
That's all right, I'm not.
If you collapse, because Brian's leading both of them, nonprofits and clergy
Yeah.
together,
Yeah,
that's just a thought
Love
to
it.
tighten it up, because then you don't need
okay.
no, they're different things, but you could put them together, because they have some of the same.
Would you like to be a second?
Well, I'd be happy to, I think my talents lie elsewhere in my relationships, but I'm a lapsed Catholic, though I was christened and confirmed at Holy Trinity.
Me too.
I'd be happy to do anything that anyone wants.
Pete, if you need help with the environmental, let me know also.
Well, why don't you be my second?
Yeah, that's a big
Would
one.
would you? Would you, so,
Would you be?
would you be my?
is there any further,
Enlightened.
is there
Thank
any
you.
further discussion on this?
Dang clerk thinks like.
Thank you for indulging me.
No.
Does anyone put wanna put forward as a motion?
Sure, I move that we proceed on this.
Is there a second? We've had our discussion, I know that's the wrong order, but is there?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Understand that these can evolve, but, so, and then to wrap it up, to Peter's point of, now that you are a primary contact, thinking about getting on your committee's agendas, or even introducing yourself or even maybe making a point of contact, like, hey, how will we maybe interact going forward?
All right, are we ready to start doing that?
Yeah, I think so, just say, hey, I'm gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, I literally will take anybody that might, other than myself, want to come to the library.
Maybe
or
you'd like to say, hey,
cultural
for
council
example,
and
I'm,
agenda.
If our primary goal is listening at this point,
yes.
then I think we are ready for it.
Okay.
Yeah, me
Good.
What I would like to see, though, is a kind of a common statement of scope as to what we're about.
We're not there yet.
That's my point.
But-
We're a little
but-
dangerous going out because we don't have the frame, we don't have our listening frame.
How about you start thinking about like how you're gonna maybe approach this?
Sure.
But I-
What would be your, what would be your
Yeah.
approach?
I think it'd be good if you could, you sort of send this to us in a clean form, and then if we all, and have a sense of what more we have to add to it. because I think each of us could volunteer to do
Yeah.
something else.
And we need to get Ed and Margot's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say a good plan of attack, and here, I'm a person that wants to go 100 miles an hour, but in this area, I think we probably have to identify maybe the first 3 to 6 groups or people that we would talk to within this relative.
Challenges, we're working all in parallel
Right,
here, right, to keep the
And
whole
then the
show
other
moving.
is, I think, and I
Yeah.
volunteered to create an interview guide, and and what I need to do is circulate that
Right.
among you and kind of ratify that for the next meeting, but this very tip of that one is gonna be, what's the scope of this?
You should all feel a little empowered to start thinking about this, interacting, representing,
Let me
doing
just see if I've
things.
understood. My translation of that is that we would put on next time's agenda, who we want to go out to in terms of identifying however many committees.
Yeah.
So let's get a specific list, and let's say how we're gonna present ourselves.
And I would expect you to kind of be the expert in your area, right? Like,
Well, but we're gonna have
of
one.
who you're gonna go talk to.
Yeah,
You want us to come to the meeting with
Yes.
that information?
We should be able to identify which committees
Plan for
are
our-
most,
Correct.
that we want to make sure we get out to, half a dozen or however many. And we want to present ourselves the same way to everybody.
Right.
So we
Right.
need to agree on that.
And then this
That's
is,
what I'm hearing.
these are our higher
my
priority
suggestion, yes.
areas.
Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Awesome.
I don't wanna go off half-baked.
No, and to use Garrett as an example, Garrett, you're gonna like give some brain space to how you'd think about like small business, you know, all that, and then we can, that's a great thing we can put on the agenda that everyone can kind of own their area next meeting in December and say, this is my approach.
And then get
Knowing-
feedback.
You know,
Knowing that
the
this is
most-
gonna come, we're gonna have better tools, like you don't have to figure it all out now, right? Because the consultant is gonna give us some tools as well.
I remember small business includes developers and carpenters and all those.
That is
And that-
actually, well.
Yeah.
We gotta go through a meeting.
Yeah, we had
It's
talked
hard,
about
yeah.
real estate as the larger developers, the Witchmeres, the Waquasets, the larger players that have different,
Restaurants, the-
Yeah,
just different environmental, what's that?
Okay,
yeah, but
Much different.
we ratified this at 6:08.
Good job.
We're all on the.
We did a
Is there
lot.
any more new business?
Thank you.
This will be interesting when we have 3-hour meetings.
David looks very suspicious.
We're on a tight ship.
You're reading stuff into
chair
me
and
that
the-
I-
Doing things, we're doing things. Does, so no new business? Can we have a motion to close then?
Do we set next meeting?
Yes, so the meeting next time is, it is on the calendar if anyone forgets. It is, December 6th at 5 PM in this room.
Oh, yes.
Tuesday, December 6th at 5 PM.
and we will meet in January too, right?
That is the plan.
I think it's January
3rd,
3rd, okay.
5 to
good.
7.
I actually already had that.
And any big updates, I will let you know by email. Everyone's been
Great.
very responsive on email, thank you.
Okay,
Is there a motion to close?
I move to adjourn?
second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here, appreciate